Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here today, and thank you for the honor of the award. You know, like most of you, we don't do it for the awards, but I have to say that getting this award has been definitely a boost. So myself and my staff and all the community members in San Luis Obispo very much appreciate it. And I just want to start by honoring and acknowledging the multiple tribes on whose land we now stand. There are multiple indigenous tribes that are a part of the Las Vegas community. I come from San Luis Obispo, and that is the land of the Northern Chumash peoples. And I think it's really important to note that and just bring into the space that reality, and also just acknowledge the stewardship that indigenous people have been doing of our lands for thousands of years. So thank you to indigenous communities. So I'm excited today to share a little bit about my own personal story, the story of the city of San Luis Obispo, and then in particular what we are doing in terms of building decarbonization and the story of that in our town. So I first ran for office when I was in fourth grade. I ran for something called Sergeant of Arms. I am not sure what that is. I'm hoping that guns were not involved, but it was the 70s, and so who knows? It's quite possible. My dad had told me that if I wanted to run for office, the most important thing was having a motto, and the motto had to rhyme. And so vote for Heidi because Heidi was mighty, was born, and I still use that motto today. San Luis Obispo, as was noted, is a small town. I'm a relatively small person, and I think being mighty is key when we're fighting the good fight out here. So get mighty is my motto, and I know all of you out here are getting mighty every day. Here's why I do what I do, and I'm sure that you have similar reasons. These are my main two. My daughter Zoe and my son Jack. My son Jack is still like this. He's 24 years old now, and my daughter's 26 years old. And I was a single mom, I was homeschooling them, I was a house cleaner, and all of these other things. I had no intention of getting politically involved. And I was having actually a pretty good time in life. And like so many women before me, sometimes all of a sudden in the middle of your life, some guy comes around and completely changes all of your plans. And for me, that was this guy. So, you know, I did not necessarily want to do this work. I was an artist. I was sort of a free spirit. I thought, okay, I'll focus on raising my kids, and then I'll move to Europe, and I'll have this great, amazing life. It'll be super fun. But gosh darn, that global warming, as we were calling it back then, it just really started to creep into my consciousness, and I really felt strongly that I had an obligation and also an opportunity, especially in my role as a mother. Everything I've done in my whole life, essentially, and up to and being a mayor, has really been an extension for me of my maternal relationship with my two kids, and therefore the future generations as a larger category. When I first got started, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how all of this worked and what I as one person can do about it. But again, like so many of you, and this quote, I think, is often referenced, and for good reason. You know, like, we are the ones that we have been waiting for. So I just started to wing it, and on some level, I've been winging it ever since, to great success, really. So I joined groups, I started groups, I tried to figure out how our local political system worked. Ultimately, I felt like I wasn't doing enough. So I started to do things that felt like a bigger commitment. And one of those things was I went out to Nacogdoches, Texas, in the eastern part of Texas, and joined a group of eco-anarchists that were living deep in the woods fighting the tar sands pipeline project. And short story, it probably wasn't a good fit for me. As I said before, you know, as soon as I got there, I felt like the looks I was getting from these mostly younger folks with tattoos and eating food that they found in a dumpster, that sort of was the vibe. I'm pretty sure that they thought that my parents had sent me there to check on them. And so that ended up not being a good fit for me. So I returned back to San Luis Obispo, and we actually had the great opportunity of having a huge oil train project proposed in our community. And the great thing about this is that the policy that would have allowed this to take place happened in our community. But the impacts were going to be all across North America, especially on the West Coast, if it was approved in San Luis Obispo. So it was a great galvanizing opportunity to get people in all types of communities all throughout the West Coast to come together and fight this project. And despite all odds, we beat Phillips 66 and were able to keep that dangerous oil train from coming through our communities. So that was a great success. So yeah. This was one of the early marches that I did. This is another one of my mottos. This is my son, Jack, again, more grown up, and it just pains me. This was probably 6 years ago now to see him with not one, but two single-use plastic bottles, which we have since gone on to primarily ban in the city of San Luis Obispo. But I actually like that picture too, because it speaks to how quickly this is all evolving, how our understanding of the challenges that we face and our ability to address those are happening at a pretty quick pace. So I didn't know what else to do. What can one person do, right? This is always my question. And so this is what led me to decide to run for office. And so I ran for office in 2014 for state assembly against a gas station-owning, fossil fuel money-taking incumbent. I knew I couldn't win in this race, but I also knew that it was the best opportunity to invite the community to really start to grapple with energy and climate issues. And so by the end of that campaign, he was posing in front of giant solar fields talking about renewable energy. So from my perspective, that was a win, but it wasn't quite the win that we had when I ran for mayor and was able to win by 46 votes, again, against another 20-year incumbent, which any of you that know anything about politics know that that's pretty tricky to do. And that really speaks to all these seeds that had been planted over the last decade. We've really galvanized a very climate-forward community in San Luis Obispo. Because so much of this is really not about climate change, but it's really about connection and community building, as has been stated so eloquently already this morning. So to get on to some of the specifics of what we're doing at the City of San Luis Obispo, we have a lot of community collaboration in our process. We have several events associated with climate action and our climate action plan. We have several open houses that we do where we have a dialogue with our community, so it's not just electeds or staff deciding what needs to happen. It's really a collaborative process with our community, and I think probably because of that, we have a high degree of buy-in. We have a climate solutions series that we work on, so every few months or so, we try and bring in someone. I'm sure there's some people in this audience today that would be great future speakers, kind of share with the community, get them excited about the new things that are happening in this space. One of the main things that we've done to be able to get us to our ambitious carbon goal is joining, in our case it's called Monterey Bay Community Power. I'm sure all of you are familiar with community choice energy or community choice aggregation. This is one of the main ways that cities are moving more swiftly towards these carbon neutrality goals. So after I won, you can imagine all the climate activists that I had been working with for over a decade at that point. It was a little confusing for all of us. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do now that we have sort of one of us in this type of position? Should we disband? What are we going to be upset about now? But instead of doing that, I gathered those people together to say, hey, this is a huge opportunity. We need to keep this movement going. And so out of that was born the Slo Climate Coalition, which is really one of the major keys to our success in San Luis Obispo. It's why we can sort of punch above our smaller weight in our community and accomplish so many goals on climate change. We have a university in our community, so we have a lot of intellectual capital in San Luis Obispo, and so many people that truly care about the next generation. And so this group now has an official relationship with the city and is basically an advisory body to us as electeds and to the staff, and we work together to accomplish these goals. So here is our climate action plan, carbon neutral by 2035. So we're really excited and proud about that, and we have a few sort of points under there, some pillars, if you will. Leading by example. To me, this is the point that I am the most excited about. I think this is a huge opportunity that we have in our city because of our ambitious goal and all of the details underneath that. My main passion is to inspire other communities to follow suit and do the same. course, we're looking at clean energy systems, carbon-free electricity by 2020. That's happened now, and that is primarily due to that community choice aggregation program that we have recently joined. We just flipped the switch on that January 1st, so we're in our first month of community choice energy, which, as some of you may also know, one of the great benefits of a community choice energy program is that it takes that profit away from the investor-owned utility and allows the community to decide what to do with that. And that has a direct nexus with these concerns and questions about equity. You know, we know that a lot of folks are being left behind in a lot of ways, and as we transition, we talk a lot about a just transition. And this is one way that we can sort of fund and support the just transition by taking money out of that investor-owned utility and giving it back to the community, especially folks that are struggling in lower income communities, so we can help support them retrofit their own built environment or whatever other programs need to happen to make sure everybody's coming with us. Green buildings, what we're here mostly to talk about today, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about our building decarbonization in a moment, but we were one of the first cities to move towards an electrification policy. We did not enact a ban as Berkeley did, but we have a clean energy choice program. So what we set up was you can have natural gas in the built environment if you want. That's a choice that you're making, and when you make that choice, you're also going to have to pay the cost of those greenhouse gas emissions, and the idea is then to use that funding to provide lower income communities the ability to retrofit their built environment to kind of make up for those greenhouse gas emissions. To me, this is one of the most important pieces, connected community. This is primarily talking about transportation. I'm sure you've experienced this in your community. If you want to talk about something even more controversial than climate change, try building a protected bike path. For reasons that elude me, it becomes very controversial, I think, as people are having to understand what has always been true but hasn't been named, and that is the public street belongs to the people and is not a space for your private property to be stored, your car. So we are, like many cities, having a somewhat bumpy transition around that conversation, but we are getting there. Circular economy, we have the only anaerobic digester of its type in the United States in San Luis, and so we've been doing a lot on both food waste, but also plastics, bans polystyrene, plastic bags, straws, bottles, all of that sort of thing. And then we have a really unique opportunity in my community because we have a lot of protected open space. So one of the new things that we're going to be doing this year is a pilot program on carbon sequestration and really trying to impact and influence the county, which is a primarily agricultural county, to join us in that conversation. And here's a sort of a long list of all the details. This is, of course, on our website if you'd like to get more information. So, natural gas, wow, really interesting and passionate people are about fire. Obviously, it's pretty primal, right? And there's been a lot of, this type of attitude and conversation in the past about the benefits of natural gas in the built environment. So that was a huge barrier to get over in our conversation as we move towards decarbonization. I'm not familiar with these first electric homes that were built quite some time ago, but at city council meetings, it sounds like they were very traumatizing for people to grow up in. So we've come a long way since these days. We had a lot, as you would imagine, pushback from the gas company and especially the union associated with the gas company. CARE sounds like the nicest organization in the world, Californians for Affordable and Reliable Energy. Not as nice as you might think. They spent tens of thousands of dollars in our community on a misinformation campaign about the benefits of natural gas. And this is happening all over the country as decarbonization starts to really spread. This is from the Pacific Northwest and Seattle, where they are currently looking at these policies, I believe. But despite all of that, we were able to move towards this decarbonization policy program. We were really excited about that. And sure enough, really soon after that, the gas company union filed a grievance with the FPPC against one of our council members who is a green builder herself. And so their claim is that because she is a green builder, that she is going to benefit from our electrification policy. We feel like that's ridiculous, and that is an ongoing conversation, but I thought that might be of interest to you in this room. And here is the actual policy itself, which you probably can't read very well. Again, that's on our website if anybody has any interest. I just want to close with this idea of climate justice, which is so important in general and really important today in particular. We look at all of our policies in our city through the lens of climate justice. We ensure that we have all the various stakeholders that you would want to be at the table with a voice at the table. And we don't just talk about climate justice as a standalone thing. I think it's essential, especially at this moment in time where we see attacks on basic human decency at the federal level, that leaders stand with everyone. So whether it's LGBTQ community, the Muslim community, we know that with the challenges that we're facing with climate crisis, that we need to build that community to be as strong as possible so that when things start to fall apart, that we have the connections to turn towards each other and not on each other. And so, as was noted, we have a sanctuary city in the city of San Luis Obispo, which I feel like is a part of that conversation, so our local police force doesn't pursue anyone based on documentation status. And this is probably my favorite title of my tenure. We have not celebrated Columbus Day in San Luis Obispo since I have been mayor, but instead celebrate the indigenous people. And last, but certainly not least, I think this is actually the key to the whole thing. We talk a lot in this space about numbers and percentages and reductions and all of this, the measurables. But we really need to be telling the story. We know that we have a problem. We have a pretty decent understanding of what that problem is. And what I'm really interested in is what is the solution? What is the vision? And so I would invite you to go back into your communities and be part of articulating that vision of a more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. So thank you so much.